We had so much fun today talking to Kimba Williams, who has a lot of great names, a lot of great expressions, and unbelievable energy. And she's talking to us about her brand and her company, Kushae, which is meant to be a portfolio of products with natural solutions to what she would describe as common female problems.
Yeah.
But I know it's controversial, some of this stuff. So I always love having your medical perspective. We talk a lot about cleanliness of the female genital area. What's the sort of professional word on what and how you need to do to clean your vulva, your vagina, and your entire genital area in a healthy and healthful way?
Look, I think it's first so important to realize that some people use anything and everything, and they are just fine with no complaints, and power to them. However, the people who show up in my office are often having symptoms or problems as a result of irritating chemicals, concerns about endocrine disrupting chemicals, and really trying to break the mold of what they may have been taught to do generations ago. So from a purely gynecologic perspective, we really like to suggest that the vagina itself is self-cleaning and doesn't need to be vigorously cleansed. And the vulva, needs to be treated with respect and avoidance of harsh chemicals if you're sensitive. And, soap and water sometimes is just fine. And sometimes you need a little Kushae.
Okay, well, you'll see, I think, that she makes talking about washing your private parts fun and enjoyable. So Take a listen.
Welcome to the Business of the V. Hello, friends and colleagues. I'm Dr. Alyssa Dweck.
And I'm Rachel Braun-Sherrill. Each week, we bring you the most fascinating investors, inventors, entrepreneurs, academics, and healthcare practitioners who are making things happen in women's sexual and reproductive health.
If you are a woman, know a woman, have a business, or care about your V health and wellness, fasten your seatbelts and listen in to another informative and inspiring episode.
We are so excited to talk today to the CEO of Kushae, Kimba Williams. Now, this is a person who takes after as my own heart. She has a lot of great names for herself and for other things. She's referred to as the natural diva and a naturalista. So welcome, Kimba. We're so excited to hear about the Kushae story.
Thank you so much, ladies, for having me. I am super excited. I'm pumped. So let's get the show on the road.
Yeah, well, so tell us. I know that you have an interesting origin story. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you met your co-founder, who is busy taking care of patients right now. So last minute wasn't able to make it. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's what happens when you have a physician co-founder, like she's fancy and then all of a sudden she has surgery to do. And so anyway, so we miss her. But Dr. Barr, we are going to represent to the fullest today, which we normally do. So as you guys have heard, I'm Kimba, the CEO of Kushae, and Kushae didn't exist 6 years ago when Dr. Barb and I met actually on a girls' trip. So it was a super random cruise for moms who were just sick and tired of being sick and tired. And we were like, we just need to get the hell out of Dodge. We need to get away from our kids and husbands and exes or whatever the situation was. And Barbara was one of the people who kind of wanted to flake on the cruise. And I was in charge of getting everybody on the boat. And so I harassed her for days and was like, listen, I know you don't know me. Just give me your credit card and just make it happen. So she finally buckled. She's like, who is this lady? I'm like, don't worry, we'll be friends. It'll be fine. So we get on this boat, and I was a pharmaceutical sales executive for many, many years, over 15 years. And so many of my friends and my clients, my customers were physicians. And so I was very familiar with being, very chummy and charming to physicians. But what I found was that in the road of pharmaceuticals, you realize that there are some lifestyles that you'd rather not have, which is one that's super dependent on Western medicine. And so for me, even though I was providing solutions for people who really didn't have choices otherwise, I decided that I wanted to be much more proactive in my healthcare journey. So it's healthy lifestyle livings. It was detoxifying my house. I went to cloth diapering for my kids. Like I really went super granola, and I use that term lovingly because I feel like that's where the natural diva came from. And but the areas that I found that I struggled in when it came to detoxifying products was feminine health. I could find shampoos and I could find lotions and face products, but I couldn't find natural things for down there, particularly as it related to me being an active person who loved to sweat and detox. But who wants the crazy stuff that comes with that, right? Who wants the funk with the odors? We don't want that. And I loved Zumba at the time, and I was like, there's got to be something that we can do about that. So anyway, so when I met Barbara, I go, well, I know you're a doctor and all. You know, I'm all highfalutin with this attitude I got, and I'm a New Yorker. What can I say? And I said, listen, I know you're a doctor and you're an OBGYN, but I'm looking for natural solutions. So if I were your patient, what would you tell me? On how I can take care of the things that don't require medication, like, BV or yeast infections or, odors from sweat, like things that no one else is thinking about, but that women are struggling with every day. And she says, to be honest with you, I don't have any recommendations. I find that most of the products are not those that I would particularly use myself, but I am also looking. And I was like, well, what's your story? And that's when she began to tell me how devastating she was when at the age of 38, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, both breasts, metastatic breast cancer. She underwent treatment, ended up going a double mastectomy just to save her life. And I was in tears at this point, and she talked about the fact that she literally had no idea of what it was like on the other side of the examination table. And that she realized that women don't have the support that they need, particularly going through a breast cancer diagnosis, and that she wanted to do more for them. She wanted to do more for herself. And that if she ever came out of this thing, she would really use that epiphany moment for doing more than she even felt like she was doing on an everyday basis as an OBGYN. And so she says, I would love to come up with products. I have no idea where to start. And I said, well, I happen to be a businesswoman and I kind of am in the pharmaceutical space. So I have a little bit of an idea about products. And that's how we got started. So a year later, we went on the same boat with little rinky dinky bottles and spray, pumps and what now as Kushae. So that's kind of how we started. And we've been going ever since. This year is our 5th year anniversary. So happy birthday, Kushae.
Amazing. I'm so curious. Do you have like a dirty 10 or a dirty 5 of the ingredients that you just, absolutely wanted to stay away from that, are potential, health problems?
Absolutely. So, and women ask us all the time, like, what are we supposed to be looking for? Because most women aren't looking for anything. They're not turning the bottle around. They'll read the quick messaging on the front and call it a day. So I would say the top 10 or top 5, let's make it quick, that you want to look out for are anything that starts with PEG and a number. PEGs are super dangerous.
And so people know, PEG stands for polyethylene glycol, right?
Right. A lot of times they're hormone disruptors, and they can really wreak havoc towards women and their overall wellness. So PEG, anything you want to stay away from. Then there are phthalates. Of course, you want to stay from those. Artificial anything, particularly scents. Artificial scents are chemically made, and they tend to be disruptors as it relates to irritation, inflammation on the skin. So you definitely want to stay away from that. You want to stay away from parabens. Everybody's kind of talking that anti-paraben talk now. They're all right. So let's keep that same energy when it comes to parabens. And then there's so many more. The other one would be, I guess, dioxins, which tend to be a byproduct of when feminine health companies, particularly those who have pads and tampons, are bleaching their cottons to make them super, super clean white. And those dioxins are actually known carcinogens. And so there's so many others. We actually have a page on our website about medical evidence that points to specific industries and or ingredients that you need to stay away from. So hopefully, ladies, you can check that out on Kushae.com.
Yeah, absolutely. I did check it out, and I wanted to get your top 5 because, I think this is such a moment for education about label reading and knowing your ingredients and that type of thing. So
absolutely.
Whenever we have this kind of discussion, I always think I'm listening inside of Alyssa's head. So one of the things you said early on was that you wanted to deal with things that didn't need to be treated with a medication.
Sure.
So I wanted to toss it over to Alyssa to say, I know that there's not total consensus on what does and does not need to be treated. So I'm interested in having your perspective. I know you love the natural ingredient approach, but are there particular conditions that you're concerned people are treating themselves with Eastern medicine solutions or natural solutions when really Western medicine is required from your medical perspective?
Sure.
Are there things that you find that people are really making a mistake about?
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, I see a skewed population of people who either have tried things on their own that are not working and they remain symptomatic and uncomfortable. So, of course, I'm going to turn towards diagnosis and treatment in a more traditional way. And as a traditionally medically trained physician, yes, I treat yeast, I treat BV with medication, but I also recommend, adjuvant maintenance or preventative measures, especially for those who are having recurrent infection. Again, people coming to me for treatment are usually symptomatic enough that they want something and they want something quickly.
I'm curious, and if I missed it, tell me, what was the catalyst for your delving into all this natural exploration, which sounds like had a huge and positive impact on your life?
Yeah, I think it was just the antithesis of, my career and the direction that I was going in, right? So I worked for the pharmaceutical industry for many years, and my hospitals were my clients. And so trumping up and down those hallways every single day was really an eye-opener for me. And that there are so many things that people are just not doing or not paying attention to when it comes to preventative medicine. Again, when you're at the point where you've got acute heart attack, acute TI, acute stroke going on, you need support, you need help. But it's really about, for me, becoming more proactive. It's maintaining a healthy lifestyle through exercise and the appropriate diet for you, and maintaining mental health, all of the things, just being more holistic. And not waiting until you are in dire straits and have to depend on pharmaceutical therapies, because they also come with, being in the pharmaceutical industry, they also come with their own long list of things that they whisper on commercials that you also don't want to, subject yourself to if you can help it. And so, proactivity is always the way, but that's not to say that you're going to avoid anything. You're going to mitigate your chances of coming into contact with something that could be very life-threatening. But to me, the more you do for yourself proactively, the better. And I think we should all begin to look at life in that way, if you haven't already.
Yeah. Actually, I don't think those commercials whisper anything. They just say them so fast that it's a little frightening. I'm curious.
Except for Viagra, where the side effects became a great marketing tool.
Exactly.
My question for you is, so it sounds like this is at least a 5-year journey with Kushae. And how did you get your products visible when there are so many other big promises out there from, big brands? Are you affiliated with doctors' offices? Is it just strictly direct to consumer? What was your secret sauce? Or is your secret sauce?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, what worked 5 years ago doesn't necessarily work today. We started with face-to-face expos. We knew that it would be difficult to demonstrate Kushae, right? Because we're not going to just drop our pants and be like, look what I can do with this
product.
That
might work. Yeah.
Hey, Mom, no hands.
Exactly. Look at me. And so we said, well, how can we go, instead of going door to door, woman to woman, because again, I come from a sales background. So I said, we've got to get in front of the consumer, but how do we demonstrate it and how do we catch their attention quickly? And where are the audiences? Where can we find women that are already very aligned with the natural cadence around products and lifestyle? Because we used to just go to women's events, but we'd find that 5 out of 10 women weren't even into natural products. And so we were sort of wasting time trying to filter through, don't you think natural products make sense? And we said, we've got to cut through the noise. And so we ended up going to natural product expos and expositions, because we said, if they're already into natural products, we just got to get them to lower the bar, literally, and start talking about what we call that space below the waist. And so, of course, me and my kitschiness came up with this little line, and we used to do a lot of natural hair expos, particularly for Black women who are now moving from like the relaxers and into natural hair spaces. We would say, hey, you got natural hair, but what about down there? And they'd be like, wait, what?
So here's today's hot flash. The vagina has a specific pH, all thanks to some good bacteria called lactobacilli. The vagina lies in the acidic pH from 3.8 to 4.5.
So it's so funny what you said, you already said, we're not going to try to change two pieces of behavior. We're going to take people who are already interested in natural products and see if we can get them interested in a new category. And it reminded me of when I was raising venture capital for a sexual health business that I was running. And it got to the point where we said, listen, can you or can't you say the word vagina without laughing? It was just like the most, if you can't, we don't need to do the rest of the presentation because this probably isn't for you. So I love the pre-screen and going to people, which is what we used to be able to do online with Google and Facebook, who are already predisposed to be interested in your approach.
Absolutely.
So where is the business today in terms of distribution, in terms of response? What are you hearing from customers? What big plans do you have for expansion? We're interested in everything. Your energy is so palpable, and it's fun speaking with you.
Yes, listen, I'm having a blast. Clearly, I enjoy these things, if you can tell. So Kushae has grown by leaps and bounds. COVID was a blockbuster year for us because we were primarily e-commerce, and thank goodness, right? We were doing the face-to-face, but in the meantime, building the email list, building our D2C business. And so, of course, when people had to defect to being online, we were ready. So that was fantastic. And that was only 2 years since we had launched. We launched in 2018. And then here comes COVID. We think we're going one way, and then we really blast out of the ceiling the other way, which was fantastic. It was that same year that I had harassed Whole Foods Market to the point where they were just sick and tired of hearing from me. And they said, sure, you can launch. And I said, but it's COVID. They're like, well, do you want to launch or not? And I was like, well, maybe. Do you guys even have stores? And so I quickly thought that this would be probably the best time to launch, because just in case we didn't do well, we could always blame it on COVID. Like, we launched in Whole Foods, but it didn't work out. It was COVID. But thankfully, 3 years later, we're still going strong with Whole Foods Market as a fantastic partner of ours. And so that mini little beta tests that we used COVID for really worked out for us. A year later, we landed Wegmans in the Northeast. So us Northerners who know Wegmans, we're in every store throughout the Wegmans chain, which is fantastic. And so that puts us in over 100 some odd stores. We're also in several mom and pops throughout the Northeast corridor. We sort of started there first, and we're working our way throughout the country, Midwest, West. And so we do have a nice, viable sort of footprint. We're talking to a lot of big box stores. Can't really name drop just yet, but some very popular, well-known stores and even drugstore chains as we launch our newest product, which will be our menstrual line, which is free of the dioxins we talked about, but it's fantastically 100% organic inside and out. None of the nasty plastic gel polymers that you'll find in many, many pad brands. We're looking to be truly and holistically organic. And so we're really excited.
I want to go back to something you said, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs who listen to this, and you don't just get out of bed and fall into distribution at Whole Foods. So Can you give us a little bit of background on how that happened? Because that was a game changer for the trajectory of the company. And I know that our listeners are interested in finding out how you made it look so easy and what some of the steps are to get it done, if they're in fact an appropriate product to be in that retailer or any other for that matter.
Yeah. And I knew, so Whole Foods was always the goal for me. I said, I'd rather start from the top and work my way down. Folks say, listen, what about Walmart? And listen, no shade to anybody, but we are a physician's formula. We are a premier brand. And so we need to start there, right? And then everybody else will come. So I think it's very important for founders, for product-based founders to understand that you may diminish the brand inadvertently and not even know it by selecting retailers that are truly not the best fit for your ultimate vision and goal of the company. So be really clear and be patient about going after the bigger fish, because they then will be the bait for smaller fish. When people hear Whole Foods, we're automatically enticing, right? And it might not necessarily work the other way around. So just really be mindful of that.
You keep making me think of all these analogies. So there used to be sort of this idea in advertising, like you would go for the extreme case. Like if this deodorant is good enough for a firefighter, it's certainly good enough for you when you're carpooling,
Exactly.
If Whole Foods likes this, then, they've already done the validation.
Yeah. Exactly. And Whole Foods has a stringent, policy around ingredients. And people know that. So they're like, if you made it there, then you can probably make it anywhere from a retailer perspective. And there are a few other stores that are a little bit more than Whole Foods, but they've set the bar some years ago. And I think they're well and highly respected. But I will tell you the secret in getting in front of them was literally stalking someone on LinkedIn. And so I have to tell you, I found a buyer in my area. And I just stalked her and acted like I knew her. I was like, oh, it was so nice to meet you at the last event. I was just making up stuff. And people will feel embarrassed and terrible if they don't feel like they remember you. And so I just leaned on human behavior of just accepting what they feel like is the truth. And so I told a little bit of a white lie. But you have to know that there was like an event that happened, right? So there's a lot of natural product events that happened. And if they post and said they were there, then you say, oh, it was so great to meet you at the blank blank. Because she was there, but maybe I wasn't. And so
that's a great story. That's a great story.
Just a little way. You got to be creative. You got to go for what you want, and I wasn't hurting anybody by just saying that I might have been someplace that I wasn't. And so I felt like it was very okay.
What would you say, other than the new things coming down the pike for menstrual health, what would you say is like the blockbuster product that really just got you on the map?
Well, our number one product, the queen of the castle, is our feminine foaming wash. And I think it's because it's considered the gateway drug for feminine hygiene. A lot of women don't assume that they need specific pH balance products for anything. And so I said, well, at the end of the day, hopefully you've decided that you need to wash with something, your Kushae with something that doesn't irritate you or burn you or isn't harmful to you. And so let's start there. And so by the time they start there with something that's universally a truth, like I do want to be clean, and so let's start with this as opposed to just regular soap, then they begin to trust, know, and like the brand and start creeping into, well, what else do you have, right? Because, oh, by the way, I do have this one little issue, but I'm not sure you can help me. And lo and behold, we literally have every product that most companies and brands have never even thought of. I mean, things from chafing to, again, sweaty odors to even the BV yeast infection piece, internal solutions. And so there's so much ingrown hairs, prevention. I mean, so many things for that space below the waist.
And what is your answer to, and this is not necessarily coming from me, but to all the naysayers out there, or just the people trained to expect that this is a self-cleaning zone and that products are really not needed. Now, I'm just going to go out there and say the inside of the vagina does not need to be cleaned. The external areas, of course, people wash with soap or and we generally do frown upon fragrances or strong chemicals. But, how does Kushae answer to that issue?
Yeah, I think the number one goal for Kushae was always to first educate. And so we always keep that in mind. We know that there are so many schools of thought based on what your mama told you or what your auntie shared with you or what you found on YouTube or what your sister said, whatever. Mm-hmm. So there's so much misinformation that we find that we're having to uneducate and then to really, truly re-educate. And so for those who say it's a self-cleaning oven, we agree with them. Absolutely. But what we find is that there's an issue with understanding the nomenclature or just literally what each, an anatomical bit is called. People are confusing. They don't even know what a vulva is. And so
we go through this all the time. The vulva is not the vagina. Exactly. You're saying it again.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so we literally have to explain it like we're talking to third graders sometimes, which is fine because most marketing is, geared towards, third to eighth grade, understanding. And so we say the vaginal canal. Typically what we mean when we talk about the vagina, it's where the babies come from. It's where the tampons go in and light bulbs go off. You see, but the vulva are the outer bits that anybody can see if your drawers dropped. You know what I mean? And so that's the vulva, the bits you'd be embarrassed about because your pants dropped down, the hair bearing bits, those types of things. And so once we educate and say, obviously, the bits that are hair bearing and do have pores and oil glands, just like your underarms, just like the rest of your body, just like your scalp, you want to wash those. You do want to maintain a level of health and cleanliness with those. And now it's just a matter of, what are you using? Are you using things with fragrances, which Kushae is fragrance free? So Kushae would be appropriate. Are you using things that are pH balanced, even just for the surface of that skin? If not, Kushae certainly is. And so using step-by-step helpful tips around what is a vulva, why it needs to stay clean, and what things you should be looking for to keep it healthy and keep that whole, that biome, whether it's internal or external biome, safe, is important. And I think that's where we are. And that's the work we continue to do.
Before we let you go, tell us the derivation or the meaning behind the word Kushae. You've used it as a name of a company. You've used it to describe an area, geographic area on the body part, on the body. So how'd you come up with Kushae?
So I'll tell you the long story, right? So Dr. Barb and I were kind of tossing around names. And I said, listen, it's got to be quite indicative of what we're doing, because we need people to get it pretty quickly, but without being crass, right? So we said, okay, let's throw some names on the board. So of course, like vagina and other names that culturally people were throwing around. I'm from the Caribbean, so some of us call it poom poom, punani. You've got all sorts of names. And so finally, Dr. Barb says, well, and I go, okay, well, there's coochie. There's a whole bunch of things that women call it. And she goes, well, what if we took coochie? And I go, that's not going to work. She goes, well, hold on, hear me out. And I go, fine. And she says, what if we did like they do Target? Like, Target. She goes, what about Kushae? And I was like, damn it, you got it.
I love that story. Okay.
Yes. And that's literally how we came up with Kushae. Of course, we Googled our heads off. And back in 2017, when we first started the company, we had one page of Google results, and it was 9 results that we returned. These days, there's, millions of results. And so we found a spelling that could work. It's a little tricky if you don't know. It's Kushae. So we were a little too clever with the spelling, but once you know, you know. And so that's where Kushae came from. For those of you in the back of the room that didn't get it, it's literally coochie made fancy. That's all.
Got it. Well, it is so fun talking to you. I guess, you have to end on the word coochie.
Yeah, literally.
So we wish you continued success. It sounds like you guys are literally off to the races.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And regards to Dr. Barb, we hope we get a chance to meet her in the future.
I know it. And she sends her regards as well. And thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. And I look forward to doing it again. We'll launch something new, and you'll have to have us back on if you.
Sounds great.
We will.
Sounds great. Thanks, Kimba. Have a great night.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast at businessofthev.com for the latest trends and trendsetters in women's health and business.